perhaps the most interesting outcome was that slightly less than half the time, the ethical robot failed, in fact, to rescue either of the other robots. We know it has time to rescue one of them. In fact, it turned out when we analysed the experiment that the reason that the ethical robot failed to rescue either of the other two proxy human robots is that it was changing its mind. It was dithering, if you like. It went toward one and then changed its mind, went toward the other. And that dithering meant that it ran out of time to rescue either of them.
So it became paralyzed with indecision.
Exactly.
So
Yes.
what does that tell you?
Well, it's an extremely interesting outcome, and we're still busy analysing the results. We understand now why that indecision takes place. That understanding is leading us to ways of perhaps building in new, if you like, increasing the capability of the ethical robot so that it does not have that indecision.
How does that compare, if you can imagine a situation, a scenario in which a human is faced with that dilemma of having two that can't save both, or it's going to be too difficult to save both? How does a human make the decision?
I think that a human, of course, will also try and make a judgment about which to save. Now, obviously that judgment's very difficult, and our robot is not capable of making any kind of judgment. But I suspect that if you, Carol, were presented with that kind of dilemma, my guess is you may well save, for instance, a child.
Yeah, there was somebody who looks more vulnerable, or
Exactly.
somebody that I knew. I would use all kinds of subjective criteria to make that choice.
Exactly.
Yes.
That's right. But imagine, Carol, that you were faced with an exactly equal choice, obviously an awful, terrible choice, where there was no difference. In other words, you had two, for instance, children, and you had to make that choice. Well, my guess is that you would make the choice somehow, and once you decided to save one of the children, you would stick with that decision. You probably would not change your mind. Now, the point is that our indecisive robot is dithering. In other words, it's changing its mind backwards and forwards several times. My guess is that you would not do that. Humans tend to continue on a course of action once they've chosen it.
The dangerous thing, and the obviously the thing that you have to look into with your experiments, is there are plans for very widespread application of robots in various situations, whether they're driving cars or fighting wars. And so what does that tell you about the capacity for a robot to make decisions that might be life and death?
I mean, that really is a very deep question, and you're quite right that more and more robots, particularly, for the last 40 or 50 years, most robots have been in factories where humans have been kept apart from the robots. Now, increasingly, we're seeing human workplace robots, workplace assistant robots, or even domestic environments. You can now buy a robot vacuum cleaner, for instance. Although none of these robots that we currently see appearing are ethical in any sense, it does seem to me that it's sensible that if you can build in even a limited facility for the robot to prevent a human from coming to harm by intervening in some way, if you can do that, then perhaps it would be a good idea to do it.
Fascinating stuff. Professor Winfield, I appreciate you speaking with us.
You're very welcome. It's been a pleasure. Thank you. Good night.
That was Professor Alan Winfield of the Bristol Robotics Laboratory. He ran an artificial intelligence experiment that showed robots who are programmed to protect humans mostly failed to do so in a time of ethical crisis. We spoke to him via Skype. If you'd like to see a video of that robot, go to our website, cbc.ca/AIH. In music, you have the Grammys. If you're an actor, it's the Oscars. If you're a wildlife artist, it is winning the federal duck stamp contest. Those are the words of Mark S. Anderson, whose painting of two hooded mergansers won him the federal duck stamp contest in the United States in 2008.